righty. If you all can start to take your seats, we're going to go ahead and get this show on the road. Got some folks filtering in. Awesome. How's everybody doing? Good, good. Awesome. All righty. So good evening, everybody. My name is Michael Bryan II.
And hi, I'm Rami Iligbide, an architecture student.
And I am at the Landscape Architecture program. We are going to be your opening ceremony for this evening. We're really glad to be here with you all. Going to jump in with a couple of opening remarks and things. Do you have a clicker? So first things first, for the program today and throughout the course of this weekend, we will have live captioning. So if you are watching from the live stream, or if you are here in person and you have some difficulty with the audio, feel free to use the live captioning in order to kind of get yourself up to speed and keep up with everything happening during the talks today. And then very quickly, we want to give our land acknowledgement. So the Harvard Graduate School of Design is located on the traditional and ancestral land of the Massachusetts, the original inhabitants of what is known as Boston and Cambridge. We pay respect to the people of the Massachusetts tribe, past and present, and honor the land itself, which remains sacred to the Massachusetts people. The school also recognizes the work of the Harvard University Native American program in cultivating the relationships that led to the creation of this acknowledgement.
So, Black in Design 2025 considers the act of rooting not as nostalgia, but as methodology, a critical engagement with the spatial, spiritual, and environmental inheritances of the Black diaspora. The conference centers design as both a tool and terrain for excavation, exploring the lineage, land, and law as intertwined forces shaping our communities. Through Black theologies, Black ecologies, and Black geographies, we gather to examine the architectures we inherit and imagine the futures we assemble, not simply by reaching forward, but by grounding deeply in what endures. Under theologies, we will dig into the conversation of spiritual roots, looking into processes of ritual and renewal that shape the diaspora and how we recognize our identity in the world. Ecologies shall explore topics like climate and politics, which have historically been shaped through the lands and places we have stewarded. And geographies coalesce discussions of migrations, territories, and boundaries, which define our position among spaces, with the tension between the commodification of Black culture and the lived realities of Black people across time. As this trilogy of ideation evolves, we hope to see a resurgence in new ideas and conversations on diasporic design that present opportunities for the reconfiguration and shaping of roots into new growth towards the future.
All right, so before we continue on, I already asked you all how you're doing, but let's get a gauge of our crowd tonight. So where are folks joining us from? Just shout out some locations if you're not coming in from Massachusetts. Where are folks coming in from? I heard Minneapolis, Northside, Massachusetts. We know y'all are here. Jersey's in the building. Anybody from down south? Texas, okay. Got some Georgia folks in here. All right, all right. Is it who? Oh yeah, we got Florida too in the building. Florida's in the building. All right. And in terms of folks in the room, raise your hand if you're designer, design-oriented, artists. Okay, okay. And what about folks who aren't? Anybody want to shout out what they do? Oh, we got some folks who aren't artists. David, lawyer. Okay, we got a lawyer. Any other lawyers in the building tonight? No, no lawyers? Okay. Well, yes, the lawyers up front. Okay, so got them close. Anybody else? Any other fields represented in the building tonight? Sociologists. Well, come on, Diane. We know. Yes, yeah, sure. But sociology is represented. Okay. Anybody else? Anything else? Cool. What was that? Finance, yes, coming from our bid mothers, our lovely, lovely bid mothers, which we'll talk about a little bit later. Awesome, so really glad you all can make it here, wherever you came from, near or far. This is a really special Black in Design for us. This is the 10th anniversary, and so. Yeah. which, it's really crazy to say that because it's just the 5th bid, so it's a nice little pairing there. But I think, throughout the course of this weekend, if you have not been to a Black in Design conference before, just expect a lot of magic to happen. This is a space where a lot of like-minded people come together for bid every 2 years, and so to be able to come into this room and to come in this space, best believe that you are amongst some of the coolest, brightest, and most innovative designers, thinkers, artists, and lawyers and financiers. So, with that being said, we're going to do some acknowledgments of our leadership, and I would like to ask 2 people to come to the stage very quickly. Can I have Dana McKinney-White and Kiki Cooper? So,
what is this?
also for you. Yep. So, you may hear me say bid mothers throughout the course of the weekend, and I say that because this is the 10 years of leadership right here. The start, the continuation. And I think if you get a chance, we have our exhibition up on the wall by the elevator, and you'll see our bid family tree. That is all the names of students who have come through this building and helped organize the last 10 years of conferences. And if you look at the route down there, you'll see that those, I think it's 7, 8, 9, 8 names. There we go. Thank you. Those 8 names, largely Black women doing their, I'm not going to say that, but doing their thing, going to censor myself there. They were the foundation, and we wanted to make sure that with this 10 years that we gave all of our honor and respect to them. So, another round of applause for our bid mothers. Thank you. Yes, yeah, you're good. Okay, so then also just calling out our co-chairs and our co-leaders. In addition to Kiki, we have Lily Saki. If you're in the building, just raise your hand really quickly. Lily's over there. We have Ariana Chanel Everett, who's going to get up in a minute. And of course, we have Rami Alagbade. Did I get that right? I missed the D. But we're going to get that. And then co-leads, we have Delilah Brown, right here, also going to join us. And then we have Donald Olorentobo. Where are you at, Donald? Yep. And then, proud to announce myself. Thank you.
And for contributors, we have Selena Abba, Darius Bortov, Montreal Jones, Imani Day, Chadwick Bolin, Selwyn Bacchus, Khan Muhammad, Tyler White, Stephen Early, Whitney Stevens, Portia Dames, we're almost there, Liz Otarola, and Oluwatobiloba Fagbule.
And then moving on from that, so as you can tell, a lot of contributors, a lot of support this year. We also want to thank our our funders this year. So typically every year, the Black in Design Conference is supported by the Graham Foundation, so we want to give a quick round of applause for them, always being grateful for their grant and acknowledgement. And then we also have a very kind of special announcement and a very special person with us today. I want to introduce very quickly Tawan Davis, who is the founding partner and CEO of the Steinberg Group, which is an impact investment firm with a focus on real estate. If you'll just really quickly raise your hand, thank you. So he is an MBA from the Harvard Business School, but finds his love at the GSD like everyone does, because we're the best, and has gifted from his Impact Foundation to support the Black in Design Conference this year. So there are 3 names that are important to have made this conference happen: Tawan, the Graham Foundation, and Kiki Cooper. Without those 3, we would not be sitting in this room this year. And I'm going to spare the discussions of the red tape and things that we had to get through, but we are here, and we are so happy to be here. So again, we are really thankful for you all being here in the building. All right. And then, let's see here. Events.
Okay, so for upcoming events, we have an amazing conference ahead of us this weekend. So as for this evening at 4:30, which is right after our opening remarks, they join Kristen Mims Skavnicki in Gund 522 for a workshop memorializing Black domesticity. And please note, limited space is available. Or stay in this auditorium for a panel discussion on ancestral fabrications, crafting collective memory. And then at 6:30 p.m., Kevin Day will present tonight's keynote, The Spider, the Rabbit, and the Preacher Man, followed by a conversation with Curry Hackett.
Great. I'm going to make a quick note, too, for the workshop. That starts at 4:30 promptly, so if you're interested in the next 3 minutes, I would say make your way up to room 522, because we do want that to be attended to. And then after our keynote tonight, we will have our very well-known beer and drums. But before that, we will be led on through procession by performances by drummers Kara Washington, Luana Brazan Ramos, Ivana Cuesta Gonzalez, and Joe Camara, who will lead us into the beer and drums reception this evening. So that is the lineup for today. We do have a very extensive and amazing lineup for tomorrow. I'm not going to spoil everything, but I do want to acknowledge that for our closing keynote, because she is in the room, and I want to give her a quick acknowledgement, we do have Princess Fanny, who has traveled from very far away to join us. So if you could just give her a round of applause. So we will have some amazing conversations tomorrow. We hope you're going to be joining us. It'll be an early start to the day, but best believe that the energy and the innovation that comes from this weekend will keep you going. So if not, there will always be plenty of coffee. All right, with that, we are going to turn it over to Ariana and Delilah to get us started with our panel keynote for this evening. All right.
All right. Good evening, everyone. We would just like to once again welcome everyone who is joining us in person or online. My name is Ariana Chanel Everett, and I am a second-year Master in Urban Planning candidate here at the GSD. I am also one of the co-chairs of this year's conference.
Nice. Can I just excuse over here? Good evening, everyone. I'm Delilah Brown. I am a Master's of Finance candidate at the Harvard Extension School, and I've been honored to be the co-lead serving this year's Black in Design Conference 2025. The ancestral fabrication, can I actually switch spots with you for a second? Sorry, my vision's a little wonky. It's getting up there. Excuse me. Much better. All right. The Ancestral Fabrication Crafting Collective Memory panel brings together 3 creators who activate ancestral ways of thinking and being through their artwork, writing, and organizing. Together, they invite us to explore the creative journey as a continuum shaped by lineage, land, and lived experience. Shaped by their work of making this conversation moves through the intertwined threads of trauma, resilience, strength, and restoration. Asking what it means to create from memory while imagining a livable future, as well, we reflect on what kind of planet we are inheriting. We also ask, what ancestral dreams are we carrying forward, and how might design become a vessel for remembering, healing, and renewal?
So our first speaker for this panel, NDGO, is a planning and design artist and the founder of the Destination Design School of Agricultural Estates, a full-service community-owned art and design school that utilizes collective producer and maker insights to help meet the food and fiber realities of local networks. They have extensive experience in regional design and land use planning, from microscopic to landscape scales, and work intersecting ecological and cultural creation, design education, and public arts. NDGO has received some awards for their work, including the Harvard Graduate School of Design Loeb Fellowship in 2016.
Then we have Ifé Franklin, is a Black queer interdisciplinary artist whose work incorporates many modalities, including photography, adire textiles, written and spoken word, drawings, collages, choreograph, sculpture, and installations. She has worked as a professional artist in Roxbury-based community activist for over 30 years. Ifé's artistic process is informed by her spiritual practice with deep links to African diasporic folk culture. Through her participatory art practice, Ifé Franklin's NDGO project, she works with communities to build dialogue about our shared history of slavery that is both.
Yes, NDGO project, she works with communities to build dialogue about our shared history of slavery that is both ubiquitous and pervasively invisible. Yes. Our last speaker for this evening is Ashia. They describe themselves as a sun shower, a glass bead, a carnivorous plant, an overripe nectarine. Ashia's writing addresses how overlapping oppressions of colonization, environmental injustice, biodiversity loss, and cultural atrophy contribute to the Black American experience, but also how creation, futurity, and joy persist alongside these harms. Ashia's words have been featured in Sierra Magazine, Atmos Magazine, Orion Magazine, and Transition Magazine, among others. They are the author of one collection of poetry, Heirloom, and a forthcoming collection of lyric essays, Tending the Vines.
And then we have Imani Day, who is a licensed architect, educator, and founder of her award-winning practice, RVSN Studios. She graduated from Cornell University School of Architecture, and after working with Robert Stern and Diller Sofrito, I hope I pronounced that right, in Renfro in New York, Day moved to Detroit at the height of the city's bankruptcy to focus on community-oriented work, designing and building socially inclusive spaces across multiple scales of impact. Prior to the GSD, Imani was a designer, teaching fellow with Cornell University, and has previously taught at Florida A&M University and the University of Detroit Mercy.
So as you can see, we have a wonderful panel ahead for you guys. And now we would like to welcome NDGO up to the lectern.
Thank you. Well, it's so good to be here. I want to thank the Black in Design organizers, Sarah Dean Whiting, all of the GSD, and especially my LOBE. I have a few LOBE fellows who are in the audience. I want to say hello and thank you to you. It's good to be here. It's been 10 years since I first had the privilege of being on this stage and talking about my work. And I think what I wanted to start with when I was reflecting on the conversation was the fact that my art practice, when I came as a LOBE fellow in 2016, had sort of taken a back seat to all of the social justice work that I was doing. And it was very hard sometimes for people to understand how they were connected or how I didn't see them as separate, right? And I always wanted to have the opportunity to lead with my art while I'm doing my social justice work. And it was the LOBE Fellowship specifically that gave me the permission and created the space for that to happen. So big up to LOBEs. So recentering the art in my social practice, I'm going to start by acknowledging the roots of my being. And through those roots, the land of my immediate ancestors, I identify as Black and as an African descendant of the Piedmont Triad region of North Carolina. I am of granddaughter of a cigar-smoking man that everyone called Blue. And I am, my grandmother was a woman who worked her hand sewn, and she also was she used a sewing machine. And she raised children out of our community when mothers needed to work and leave them in trusted hands. And I grew up hearing tales, stories from my uncle, who's on the faded picture there on your right, of sharecropping, and how he wasn't afforded the ability to go to school because of that. And also on my left, which is my mother, I heard from her stories of the moonshine that she would get, or they would get, and it wasn't her. Other people would get from across the line, the Virginia-North Carolina line. I also heard of migrations away from the rural backwoods of North Carolina, how important it was to go outside of that place. And a lot of my family members, many of them, worked in factories, textile mills. Cone mills was the one that I heard often. And one of the things that I remember I reflected on a lot growing up was my grandmother saying how we worked so hard, we worked the factories away, but we also worked our health away. And I wanted to say that what I learned from them and what I witnessed from my ancestors, their way of knowing and navigating the rural landscape was something that institutions could not teach me. I was the first person in my immediate family to graduate from college, and of course this was a great accomplishment. They were proud of it. I wanted to share this first piece that I ever created after going away. It's the first piece of artwork that I ever made after going away, leaving home, going overseas to study, and it was a dedication to my mother's father, Blue. It was a cigar box that I had acquired, and with the piece, it was a meditation on the memories of my home, where I'd left. And by the time I made this work, I'd already gone off to school in a foreign country. I was coming back across the Atlantic, and several years into a sustainable fashion business. And I wanted to speak a little bit about that because it was, like so many people before me, I wanted to be a creative force in the fashion industry. I talk about this a lot with my students, how important it is to honor what it is that you hear and see when you're being taught. Just because someone is an authority figure doesn't necessarily mean that they know what is really the solution to the things that you need to give attention to in your own community, or even within an industry. So, like the fashion and apparel industry that we all know, that in the early 90s, we were questioning its practices, and we know about the exploitation, and we know about the labor, unfair labor practices. We know about so much. But at the time, for me, it was a challenge, right? Because I was wanting to see myself in the industry. I want to skip a little bit and go to the journey from fashion into farming. So what was interesting for me was that the practices of the fashion industry and the apparel industry and the issues that I was addressing with waste was kind of tied to what was happening in the farming industry or the agricultural practices that were around me in my community. And I didn't know to connect those things in school, but when I came out of school, I really tried to do that. And there was also this opportunity for me to begin to study some of the great scholars that came from where I came from. I read a book, Souls of Black Folk, by W.E.B. Du Bois, and it really helped me understand some of the complexities of the settlement patterns of my family around the slave plantation agriculture. And so that was the sort of connecting point and a place of deep study, which I continue to study, I continue to research, to understand these systems that we're up against. I'm gonna skip through really quickly and some of the projects that I've done over the years that have really honored my social practice have been in community, I would say that all of them are about community, that nothing that I do is anything other than a reflection of my community. But these particular relationships were questions around wealth, for example. One question that kept emerging and continues to guide my research is how do we cultivate forms of wealth, land stewardship, and cultural memory in a way that is held collectively rather than extracted individually. It's not simply an economic question. It's relational, it's ethical, and it's even a spiritual one. We are asked to rethink kinship, to rethink ownership, to rethink our values and our principles. And we really work to try to show that in the work that we do. I've been fortunate enough over the years to begin to put this together in a way in which other people have recognized it to be as important. I think that the reparative design pedagogy work that we've done, and fortunately we've had some support from the Harvard Graduate School of Design and the co-design field labs. Many of the instructors here have supported me all along the way to really carve out some of the nuances. You know, where do you go when you want to create a pedagogy that's about care, right? Where do you go when you want to acknowledge, hundreds of years of practices and really hard, complex, and climate change, complex ideas and issues, and then break them down so that they're digestible for families that don't have these opportunities, or for children, for example, that are overwhelmed by what it is that they are hearing and seeing in their environment. And being in a place like the GSD and working with amazing instructors, Diane Davis, social designers, working with the students, provided an opportunity for me to understand that our children really were not, and our families were not, it wasn't that they didn't have the capacity, it's just that they didn't have the opportunity. So my work from that point on has been really about bringing those opportunities further south. On Ashia, we worked also very closely to look at the Green New Deal Super Studio. It is an important place for our families who are working deeply in the South to preserve their land, to carry it forward generations into the future, to understand what's sort of driving the research and the technologies, the new innovations that are outside of what they are experiencing and can relate to in their own home environment. So this is just some of the outputs of some of that research that we put together with students over a 6-month period. This was during COVID, and we placed pretty high out of, I think, 400 and something entries. We were like the top 20, you know, so it was a very proud moment for us. And the other piece of the work that my art social practice that I think being here gave me the opportunity to really center myself as an artist. This is no disrespect to any male in the audience or identifying as male architect, but I noticed that there were a lot of people in the field were sort of elevated, and gender was an issue, right? And I wanted to know how I could focus on women designers and women architects, for example, and women or feminine-based space. That's just a question to see how it translated into the built environment. And for me, that meant that I needed to create my own space, right? So I began looking at Du Bois's research, social architecture, social relationships, and wanted to move beyond a typical idea of what the built environment is like through architecture and think about what a social architecture of relationships would be like. This is reflected in the years of grassroots organizing, cooperative economics, solidarity economies and creativity, just amazing leadership that had been poured in over the years. And we are now walking this trail, 200 miles. It's not typically a trail, but people like to call it a trail. We don't really know what to call it outside of the fact that it's an art project. in social design and research. But we're working through it. We are collaborating with scientists, we're collaborating with artists and designers, and continuing to be informed by what it is we're finding in the landscape. I would say that this is site number 2 on the trail. Is a forest, and some of the students from the GSD are actually in this photo as well, who came down one summer and worked with us, with the students, to begin to identify this environment. And I think I just wanted to share it because this is a deep dive into the forest. These are things that aren't always articulated in a proposal or in a journal. Sometimes it's hard to articulate the things that happen through these rites of passage, this deep relating to the natural environment in a way to where you can discover yourself and be with yourself and connect with yourself. And connect with your ancestors. So we also are thinking about the trail in the sense of, is this a place where we can house a school for all of the research and all the work that we've done? Certainly there are lots of opportunities to acquire land. There are lots of places for Destination Design School, the school that we founded with this pedagogy, to go. But we are looking for a place now where we can stay, and so we've started working with our designers and our artists to really, and architects to really start visioning with our students where that place needs to be. I think the last few minutes of the time that I have, I want to focus on some of the deep down work that I've done, and it's kind of hot in here. I layered up. I'm coming from Atlanta. Y'all, excuse me. You know, I said it was 50 degrees high, and it was 70 degrees high, and I didn't know what to do. Okay. We are hot Atlanta for a reason. So some of the work that I'm able to do with art centering as my practice. This is the trail that we do in the Georgia Black Belt with this project is following Du Bois's footsteps. If you read Souls of Black Folk, there's a chapter, number 7, called Soul of the Black Belt. And he's describing what he saw in the landscape amongst our agricultural landowners, those who inhabited the plantations after the Civil War, after those masters went away. This is a piece, this is a performance piece that I do in several locations, and it's a Black deconstruction. You probably are aware of Black reconstruction of Du Bois. These are pieces that are acquired in and around estate sales. Some of them are acquired, fabric and cloth that's acquired from the plantations themselves, and I just go through a process of making them my own, reclaiming them into new things, new. I won't say objects. They're not coming across as objects at the moment, but they do tell me things about what it is that they. It feels as though that the conversation that I'm having with them is that you need to remember me, and that you have the opportunity to create what you want and need for yourself. Don't forget us. These are the things that I'm hearing when I'm making these pieces. Those are deconstructed quilts. Again, all of these pieces are sourced locally from around the plantation settlement areas. And then they just work through the way that they work through. I want to close by just reading a poem. This is from Julius Lester, Time's Memory. And it sort of sums up sort of where I am in my own walk, what the art practice is doing for me spiritually, and how it's regenerating me and connecting me with my ancestral lineage. I lay within the body of the woman who was called Anima, and I listened to the silences between the beats of hearts that beat no more, and the wind and breaths that no longer breathe. I saw with eyes that were only sockets and skulls. There I was, no larger than a twinkle of a star. I already knew that lives did not consist only of what happened during one's brief span of years. No. Each person is the sum of the generations that went before, generations of people whose names have been forgotten, whose faces have sunk below when memory cannot go. Yet these generations live within everyone, pulsating with each other, each heartbeat, and each breath. I listened to the blood roaring through her body, and within the cacophony, I found the memories of her brief 16 years, the memories of her mother and father, their mother and father, and their mother and father, and on back to unnumbered time, when one counted the rising and settlings of the sun, and there was no months or years, but only time as broad and without an end in the universe. But as intensely as I listened, as arduously as I searched, I could not find, gotta keep them on. I could not find the reasons why I had been conceived. Neither did her blood tell me where we were being taken and what I was to do when I got there. When Amma, the creator God and master of all life and death, had Amina's father place me inside the woman, he told me my name was Ikandayo. Sorrow becomes joy. Surrounded by sorrow, deeper than any sea and wider than any sky, I thought I had been misnamed. Thank you. And now, thank you, we have Ifé Franklin. Ifé.
Peace and love, everyone. I hope you are well. Peace and love. Peace and love. Thank you. Thank you. I'm very excited to be here. Very excited. And I just want to take a moment to take y'all in. I just want to take a moment to breathe you in, to feel you, to feel your frequency. And I'm smiling because I have been angsting about this, about being here, because this is a different arena for me and a different arena for my work. So I'm very, very, very excited, and I want to thank Kiki for understanding how my work fits into this space. Excuse me. Indigo, your work, the quilt pieces, so incredible. Like, my skin is moving. My grandmother was a quilt maker, so I come from that tradition. And we were just sitting there talking about how her people are from North Carolina and Virginia, and so are mine, so we think that we're cousins. Because she would say, oh, you look like my cousin so-and-so, and I'm like, we're all cousins up in here. I am originally from Washington, D.C. I will always be a Washingtonian. I grew up in Washington, D.C. in the 1960s. I was born in 1960, grew up in the 70s, total Black Power, total Chocolate City, you know, when Chocolate City was actually chocolate. It still is, compared to Boston, it still is, so. You know, I mean, when I go home, I still feel the same vibe. This is the thing. Like, the frequency for generations is still there. The air still feels the same, you know, the laughter, you know, it's a beautiful place. I'm very excited to see how my work fits into the work that you all do. As someone was reading my bio, I work in many different genres. I've been very blessed to do many things. And lately, within the last, since like 2016, my work has been getting larger, and the scale of it, and what the components that come into play to make it live and to make it breathe takes folks like right now I'm working on a project called Cabin in the Sky, and I'm working with structural engineers. Like, this is a whole, like, all of this is so new and beautiful. I'm working with structural engineers and folks who are, the cabin is now, the cabin, it will now be a rocket ship. The cabin is now the mothership. The cabin is now a vessel that will take the souls of our ancestors to another galaxy, because there is no safe place on the planet for Black people. So it's time for us to go somewhere else, to boldly go. We deserve safety, and we deserve love, and we deserve sovereignty, and to have our own space. So that's what this Black in Design, this is what y'all do. You create your own spaces. And that's very exciting. And I just want to mention this one thing, because I see this brother sitting there. Like, I'm telling y'all, I was like, oh my God, I'm going. And I'm going to be speaking at the Big H in Harvard. And when I got to the lobby, I heard this young, I don't know how you identify, so I heard this person who I feel like is male identified say that their name was Shango. And he wasn't talking to me. And I was like, excuse me, is that your name? And they were like, yes. And I said, well, my name is Ifé. And I knew that my ancestors, I was like, okay, I don't need to worry about being at the podium. I don't need to worry. I'm at home. I'm at home in Black in Design. Oh, there they are. Yes, I'm at home at Black in Design. And I like to think of myself, no, not like I think, I know. I see myself as an ambassador of ancestral wisdom, wellness, healing, and joy. My work is absolutely directed by my ancestors. They speak to me. They tell me what the piece should be, what it should be called. I'm in meditation with them every day. I want them to come to visit my Ori, the Yoruba word for head. I want you there. I need you there. And they are my right hand and my left hand. I happen to be left-handed, so I could say my left hand and my right hand. Okay, we got a bunch of lefties up in here. Okay, that's good. I'm trying to, I had a little stuff written down here because, I'm just an analog girl in a digital world. So I'm really happy that, see all this is, I think I'm cute up here. I am fancy. I'm fancy today. My work is absolutely community driven. I'm nothing without community. I cannot do this work alone. I do not want to do this work alone. So I will just jump ahead to these images. I am a graduate of the School of the Museum of Fine Arts, Boston. What year was that? 1989. And then I went back for a year of graduate study, what they call the 5th year program. I don't know if it's still active. I didn't win the 5th year program. I didn't win, and I was heartbroken. But my ancestors just continued to help me win. Like, that was just a jump off point. So the ancestors came to me and asked me to create cabins for the ancestors. And they came to me in a dream, and they told me the name of Ifé Franklin's Indigo Project, all of this came to me in dream. And it also happened in a conversation that I had with the artist Takwase Dyson, who lived in Boston for maybe a year and a half. They came to an exhibition that I had at a place that is no longer there in the South End called Villa Victoria. They had a gallery. I had a solo exhibition there. And because I'm multidisciplined, I had several different types of work in the show. Takwase came to my studio and she said, if you could focus on one thing, what would it be? And I would say the fiber arts, the adire work, the aso adire, which is indigo fabric. And she said, okay, I want you to cover the whole studio with indigo fabric, just everything. And I was thinking, I'm not doing that. You know, there was shelves and all this, but I listened, I went to sleep, and my ancestors told me what to do. The name of the project, what it should look like. You need to build these cabins because they're sacred spaces, and you need to cover them with the Asua deity. Covering them with the Asua deity shows the connection between the past and the present. This is the very first cabin. As you can see, it's totally covered except for the that one part of the roof because we wanted to have, because this particular cabin has a door and people could have gone inside. All of the fabric was made by volunteers. There was no funding. I didn't have any funding for this first cabin at all. So the wood was donated, people donated their time, and then I had this solo exhibition at place called Medicine Wheel Productions in the South End, in South Boston, that is now called Spoke. So that's the very first cabin. This is the second cabin that was in Franklin Park. Franklin Park is, you know, my last name is Franklin, so I always wonder, okay, reparations up in here. So this is the second version of the cabin. It had no Adiere. So I went in and embellished it. And this particular cabin, you can't see it on the sides, the community participation, what people could come and write on the cabin, write messages to their ancestors on the cabin, and of course their ancestors could read it from wherever they were. So this cabin was filled with blessings and was a part of, there was a big, huge art exhibition, I can't think of the name of it, that was in Franklin Park. This and the third cabin looks exactly like the second cabin. It was in North Charleston for a stint. This is the fourth ancestor cabin, the ancestor slave cabin. Let me just be really specific about that. I have no shame about the bondage of my ancestors. So this was the fourth cabin, and this cabin is a replica of the cabin that is in the National Museum of African American History. The one that they brought from the Gullah Islands. So this is a replica of that. We put a deity on the front, and then the porch became an altar. This was really beautiful. The porch became an altar. People brought flowers, old Bibles. Somebody brought some moonshine in jugs. People brought collard greens. Like, people brought flowers. The whole base of the cabin was filled with flowers, and we performed a ring shout. Okay, so the cabin was there, and then the ancestors came to me in a dream and said, it's not complete. You need to do one more thing. And I had never heard of a ring shout. I did not know what that was. And so they planted this idea, and of course I had to do my research. So in Franklin Park, like 200 people came. And you know, I just put it out on social media. I didn't know who was going to show up. I didn't know. But community, the thing is, community needs and wants to connect with our ancestors. We need it. They're calling us all the time. They want us to continue to love them and not have shame. No shame. Because we wouldn't be here without them. We are the byproduct, not the byproduct. We are the result, the absolute positive result of our ancestors and their endurance. This is so that cabin was 2017. This one was recent in Concord, Massachusetts, because the Umbrella Arts organization they were celebrating the Black inhabitants of Walden Woods. There is a book called Black Walden. There were Black folks who were enslaved in Boston. They were freed, and then they had to move. I guess because I haven't read Black Walden, but the download that I'm getting is that they had to leave because they were free, and the other Black people hadn't been freed yet. So they didn't want other Black people to see them. Thank you. Okay, they didn't want other Black people to see them, to know them. So they moved to the Walden Woods. Brister Freeman was one of those people. Fenda Freeman, his wife, another gentleman named Mr. Cato. So this is the 5th cabin where we embellished it, and we also had an ancestral procession that led back into the woods in this trail. It was very beautiful. I wanted to include this picture and this one, and okay, those two, because prior to the cabins, and I would visit these graveyards. I've started researching the graveyards here in Boston. What's very interesting about Boston is that there are a lot of times actual tombstones for enslaved people. And I'm very interested as to why that is. Because down south, you may have a rock or a shell or something like that. But there are several places where you can go and visit people who were enslaved. This particular, I wanted to include these because these are in the graveyard in Harvard Square. You know where that white church is, and then there's a graveyard to the right of it? There are 2 enslaved black women. Well, there are some other enslaved people there, but there are 2 enslaved black women there, one named Cicely and one named Jane. I refer to them as Miss Cicely and Miss Jane. Miss Cicely and Miss Jane are buried there. You can go visit them at any time. Maybe, y'all might want to take a stroll over there doing Black and Design and lay some flowers down for them. Because of them, we are here. And one of these women, I don't remember which one, was enslaved by, and a lot of times, the enslavers, they like to put their name on there. Jane or Cicely, one of them, I don't remember which one, was enslaved by Brattle, as in Brattle Street. So here I am making offerings to these women. Yeah, you can see there it says, the body of Cicely, enslaved by Brattle. And here I'm pouring palm oil to appease the souls of the ancestors. I have been, ancestors also wanted me to start doing processionals. So I have been doing processionals. I've done 2 in Dorchester, 2 at Copp's Hills Burial Ground. If you don't know, Copp's Hills Burial Ground is in the North End. There are 1,000 black people buried there. They used to call the North End New Guinea. And if you go to the Copp's Hills Cemetery, the thing that's so interesting is that it's right on the Freedom Trail, right down the street from the Old North Church. And, they're all kind of patriots being celebrated, people from the Tea Party, all of this. And if you go in there, there is a kiosk that will show you and talk to you about the African Americans buried there. Prince Hall is buried there. He has a huge monument. And then you will see tombstones everywhere. And then you will see a plot of land that has nothing. And that is where the folks are buried. Well, actually, it's not true. Dart Adams wrote a very incredible piece about the lost souls of Copp's Hill. There are 2 tombstones there, and the rest of it is empty. And it's surmised that it's empty because their tombstones were made out of wood, because these people could not afford to have granite, etc. But one of the things I want to do is I want to have a project where we make tombstones, and we go and we put them there to honor the souls of these people. So these 3 enslaved people are in Dorchester near the Strand Theater. There's a huge Dorchester North. A lot of people walk past it because you don't know it's a cemetery. It has high walls. It's right there on the corner. There are 3 enslaved people there. I don't know if you live in Boston, you may know of this restaurant called Comfort Kitchen. This graveyard abuts Comfort Kitchen. This was the very first procession that we had for them, and last June we had a second one where they also came to me right then and there and told the owners of Comfort Kitchen that they need to have their names inside their restaurant somewhere. They need to have some kind of, because they're already looking out for them, but they want to encompass them because they do such great work with community. This is one of the processions at the Cops Hills Burial Ground in the North End. This piece, 2024, was a part of the Boston Triennial and the Boston Public Art Triennial. They have a branch of it called the Lot Lab. I was approached by the curator, Jasper Sanchez, because he really felt like my work would fit here because they were celebrating 3 enslaved people in Charlestown named Mark, Phyllis, and Phoebe. Maybe you have heard of Mark, Phyllis, and Phoebe. Mark, Phyllis, and Phoebe, 3 enslaved people, long story short. They murdered their enslaver, John Codman, as in Codman Square. The connection is real. Codman Square. He enslaved them. He was a cruel enslaver. Mark wanted his freedom. His wife lived in Boston. His wife and son lived in Boston. He lived in Charlestown. He was able to go to Boston because, you know, old boy hired him out to do work there. On one of these occasions, he called Mark back suddenly, and Mark, which he thought was very strange, and in the time it took him to take the ferry back from Boston to Charlestown, old boy had sold his son. And Mark just lost it. You know, Mark wanted out anyway, and then he burned down some buildings and things like that, and I'm smiling because I'm very happy that he did that. And once they murdered him, they went to trial. Of course, they were found guilty. Mark was tarred and feathered, hung. The sheriff ordered his body back to Charlestown. They put his body in a gibbet and hung it at the Charlestown-Somerville line for like 20 years. And his body basically became like a stop sign. His body, they would say things like, and Paul Revere makes references to the gibbet of Mark. Oh yeah, go down the street and you could turn left at the gibbet of Mark. So I wanted to make something that would memorialize Mark, Phyllis, and Phoebe. Phyllis was burned at the stake. This was 100 years after burning at the stake was, you know, they didn't even do that anymore. But because she was black, of course, you have to be as cruel as possible. And then Phoebe, which I think is very interesting, was not murdered. Phoebe was sent to the Caribbean to work and die in the sugarcane fields. So my question is, why? Why was she spared? And so, you know, the old souls come, the Eglins come to me, because she was either his daughter or his concubine or both. Why would he spare her when she was there? So this particular piece was put together, was structural engineers. I designed it, but I didn't really have a hand in building it. BRM Production Management, okay, I'm sorry, I'm getting the hand. BRM Production Management, a woman-run company, and some structural engineers put this piece together. And the thing that I want to leave with is, I have never worked with black designers. I have never worked with black architects or structural engineers, and I would love to do that. I want to connect with y'all. I want to know who you are. I want to know what you do, because this is basically it. It's a cocoon, and I wanted them to be able to go into a place and rest. I wanted them to go in there, and then if they wanted to come out and be the beautiful butterflies, they could. But if they just wanted a place to be, that's what I wanted this to, and I wanted it to have the indigo fabric, the osso adiade, so that they could have an identifier. The bottom of this is the Congo cosmogram, so I wanted to have different identifiers, and the structure that's holding it up is called a pyramid, so all of these things will call them in. Okay, okay, this is a copy of my book, The Slave Narrative of Willie Mae, that will be on sale here. I will end with this. This is, if you live in Boston, recently the Museum of Fine Arts Boston gave back 2 big jugs of a gentleman. I call him Mr. Dave, David Drake, Dave the Potter. He was enslaved in South Carolina, and his job was to make these huge pots where people would put, you know, because there was no refrigeration, et cetera. And Mr. Dave could read and write, and he inscribed his pots. And, you know, he was ordered to stop doing that, but he didn't because he was a G. Okay, he just kept doing it. So I made this. I also create these things called conjure bottles. So this is my tribute to Mr. Dave. So my work, yeah, that's it. So this is what I do. Like I said before, I'm very excited to be here. If you're around in fall of 2026, please come and see Cabin in the Sky, because it will encompass the cabin, the procession, and the Hush Harbor. Thank y'all so much. I'm so appreciative. Oh, and I want to introduce the next speaker. Please excuse me. I want to introduce the next speaker, Ashia Ajani. Ashia Ajani is a writer and environmental educator, so please give her a warm welcome. Thank you.
Hello, everybody. I was actually telling Ifé, as folks are coming in, I don't get nervous before these things until I'm right up at the podium. So now it's all hitting at once. Especially after I just was taking so many notes because I learned so much, I took away so much. I'm really excited to be in conversation with both of you. And I'm just like, yeah, really excited for what we're gonna build together and what we're going to discuss. My name is Ashia Ajani. I use they, she pronouns. I am originally from Denver, Colorado, which is the unceded territory of the Cheyenne, Ute, and Arapaho peoples. I don't know if anybody here has ever been to Denver or has spent prolonged time in Denver. The main things that you need to know about Denver is that 5 Points lives on, 5 Points will never die, and that Denver is Atlanta for white people. And I say that, yes, let's soak that in, let's take that in. I say that because I don't think that I could have been radicalized in a place other than Denver, based on my background and based on the things, you know, that I was thinking about, writing about, learning about as a ecological steward, as an environmental educator, and as a writer. So I'm not gonna spend a lot of time talking about my background or just kind of like my methodology. I actually find I have a really hard time nailing it down. I think it's like, I'm a very like show not tell person, I guess, you know, very writerly. So I'm just gonna read a couple of poems. I'm gonna talk a little bit about, you know, some of the themes that I discuss, but really I'm gonna read a couple of poems and then I'm gonna read an excerpt from my forthcoming book, which is coming out in September 2026, and talk a little bit about some of the ideas behind that. So yeah, I guess, you know, as I had mentioned, you know, I'm originally from Denver. I now live in Oakland, California, which is unceded Huichinoloni lands. And I think one of my favorite things about living in Oakland is the rich history that is there, and how much connective tissue I actually do see between Colorado and Oakland. Denver and Oakland, I might say, not in terms of like formation or even like geography or even topography, but in terms of Great Migration. And then, you know, who is kind of being pushed out of cities that are very, very, even, you know, Oakland was a very, and still is, a very, very black city. And in a lot of ways, Denver was a very, very black city and still is a very, very black city. But I think that, you know, the way that that kind of functions out west is very different in areas that are majority black cities. So I see a lot of connective tissue between those places. I'm a writer, you know, like born of the West. I'm a writer of the West. And so that I think really informs, you know, my pedagogy, how I approach, you know, land stewardship, writing about, you know, like ancestral tethers, things like that is oftentimes through the form of migration. I don't, you know, people here know Vince Staples. Yes, okay. Vince Staples is one of my favorite rappers. And one of his more recent songs, Etouffee, he said, I think, Grandma left Louisiana, tried to escape Jim Crow, but she can't escape the massa. And, you know, that really informs how I think about the West as well. where am I going with this? Okay, yeah, so, I mean, in terms of me, I am, first and foremost, I've always been like a writer. I've always been a storyteller. When I was a kid, I'm an only child, if you can't tell. I'm an only child, and so I spent a lot of time by myself, being very inventive and being very creative. I spent a lot of time outdoors, and so I would like make up stories about like mushrooms, and I would make up stories about like the spirits that lived in like the backyard and like the forest, and I would like tell my grandma like, oh, like I would like talk to this spirit. I'd like, this tree was like speaking to me, and she'd be like, okay, cool. But you know, like I think I kept running with that, right? You know, and I kept thinking about the ways in which like my ancestors came to this very, very different land. And when I say very different land, I'm talking about first, my family came from Mississippi to Detroit, and then Detroit to Denver. And especially being in Denver, how different that place is from both Detroit and Mississippi. And even thinking about, you know, like some of those ecological, those ancestral tethers back to our motherland in West Africa, how there were so many similarities between even like the soil type, the kind of plants that were being brought over to the south. And then you come out to some place like Denver, which is like a whole different scenario. But you have a lot of people who are mining, who are, you know, like metal workers, who are bringing a lot of, you know, our ancestral traditions to different lands in other ways, you know, and I think that the environment is the foundation on which, you know, we understand ourselves and we build ourselves off of. So I do, in doing that, you know, I'm trying to synthesize science, traditional ecological knowledge, history and cultural lineages. I think that my work is very like multi-layered and multifaceted. I am a writer first and foremost. I mostly do poetry and nonfiction. I do a little bit of fiction, but those are like the, especially storytelling lineages. I think like, you know, like those oral histories, those oral narratives align best with like kind of like those like tricky boundaries between like prose poetics. I would say that I am an Afro-pessimist and an Afro-futurist and a Pan-Africanist. Come talk to me about it later. Because the last time that I said that in front of a group of people, they were like, oh. And you know, even though it has pessimism in the name, I don't think of Afro-pessimism as pessimistic. I don't think of it as defeatist. I don't think that that is us giving up our agency. I think that that is us reckoning with the world as it is today, and realizing like what we need to do to get to a world in which like, you know, Black people can thrive and be. And so I think that those are some of the worlds that I'm reaching towards in my writing. So I think this was part of my bio, so I won't say the whole piece of it, but I will say that a lot of my art is influenced by the Black arts movement, Planet Earth, FemMCs, birdsong, collage, art, kente cloth, and rotting fruit. It speaks to the rich sensory nature of Black life in communion with nature. And this is the cover of my book, Heirloom, which is my first poetry book. I'm gonna read one poem from it, and then I'm gonna talk a little bit about the poem on the next slide. Before I read this poem, which is called Do-Rag, I wanted to mention that it was part of an art installation in New York. A first-gen Nigerian-American artist, that's their work on the left-hand side, did a collage, did a art piece of do-rags inspired by my poem. And I got to, you know, like record and think about, you know, like some of these like connective tissues between, you know, synthetic fabrics, you know, like African diasporic, like print, and just like some of those tensions between what the Atlantic took from us. And so this is my poem, Do-Rag. Forward moving, we always turn back time. Like ocean built of body memory, the God of good grease paints follicles holy in those waves. Lord, those ancient waves facilitate a brother's boldest baptism. Wipe me down, a litany of all the good that came to stay. The Atlantic remembers every part of Black anatomy. Like a curse, a calling, those cold waters shift and stagnate under a cotton polyester blend. They never got to lay claim to the water, but by God, how they dammed, privatized, seized, overfished, extracted, deregulated, poisoned, commodified, pulled the cloth from the crease quick like a run in a stocking, ripped color clean from scalp. An instantaneous divide reminds what can be taken and what can be absolved. Later, a Black boy will fit his mouth around the word rage, hold it behind his tongue, ferment his brooding into savage. Watch him pull bones from the riverbed, casting wide mesh drenched in cotton coagulations. Pray for summer rain to rinse all these trifling transgressions clean. Any flood breaks a bullet's back but does not siphon blood back into body. Baby, I can't help but enshrine you as a vengeful sea god, drowning in all that drip, all that wet, all that sheen. So this next poem that I'm going to read, and actually I wasn't even going to include this poem in this panel, but because we got indigo workers here, I was like, okay, we gotta talk a little bit about, some indigo. And this is a poem that I recently had published in Orion magazine, which is an environmental writing magazine. It is called Reincarnated Indigo Milky Cap. For those who aren't familiar, indigo milky cap is a type of mushroom. It's one of the few mushrooms or colors occur, or one of the few instances, of blue that occurs in nature. And I've only seen it once, but apparently it is very widespread in the South. I've only seen it once in the, what would you call it, Pacific Northwest, but I've never actually seen it in the South. But I have, family lineages in Mississippi, and so I was thinking about like lineage and reincarnation, and color, of course, and then also folklore. I write a lot about folklore, and so this poem is called Reincarnated Indigo Milky Cap. Starts with an epigraph from Nina Simone. Oh, everybody took a chunk of me. I go to the woods searching for indigo. Brer rabbit and briar patch, like any good trickster, how and whying myself out of grief. Britches stuck to soil saturated with my corals memory. My mother thinks me sensitive. My father, superstitious. We should be so thankful. We, 5 generations removed, inheritance pale-stricken, losing luster. Here come the graveyard, the decomposed, evidence of life enduring. A greedy ancestor is better than a dispassionate one. Old cornrows fighting new growths. What lies beneath the surface is often more interesting than what pokes its head above dredged earth, conversing in tongues too celestial for resurrection. As above, so below. How highly one must think of themselves to adorn such an ephemeral body in shades respective of the divine. Glamour is half the fun. Tradition an enduring wound. I wonder, if you slice my skin, would I bleed blue too? I like a good creation story. Born to Mississippi matrons, they never grew indigo, but heard of Negroes with hands stained midnight a few county lines over, who carried their craft over from Africa. The line between culture and commodity blurred once more. Thickets of blue gills my boots trip trailed, gone to retrieve that heavenly hue. Everybody wants to forget the already forgotten. Our dead sing anyways. At home, this forest floor, the land is Lord, even when we'd like to say otherwise. Open air church draped in moonlight calls us still. Even when the pines grew loud and groaned, spittled sap till blue gum drooled down, something about that gospel turned weeping to wonder. Our most precious resource returned. I've come to collect. I've come to die. Blue, the most elusive of all colors in nature. Black, a methodology, not a mechanism. I fill my pockets with sapphires who otherwise would pepper the night sky. This too is poetic. I've got pennies to sell, everything to hoard. Nothing stays but the stains. Spores wrap round my finger like plantation porch. I grasp mountain air, release my blues in smoke. History runs from me like a jackrabbit. Lickety-split, lickety-split, lickety-split. Oh, child, this is teeny tiny. This I thought was going to format a little bit better, but I did want to read an excerpt, a little bit of my nonfiction from a forthcoming work from Tending the Vines, which is coming out with Timber Press, September 2026. It tracks belonging, anti-belonging, Black emergent knowledge, traditional ecological knowledge through the lens of 6 invasive plants, 1 native weed, and then 1 plant that is currently considered functionally extinct, although there is a lot of effort to bring it back. Does anybody know which one I'm talking about? American chestnuts. American chestnuts. So it's considered functionally extinct, but there is a lot of effort to hybridize it and try to bring it back. Yeah, there, there's a lot of tensions around, like resurrection and like, what does it mean to like, human hubris and whatever. But so this is about the native weed that I'm talking about, which is rabbit tobacco, which is a very popular plant, I think in a lot of spiritual traditions and a lot of smudges. I think that it's a plant that navigates a lot of really interesting connections between Native Americans and then detribalized Africans. That's what I consider myself, a detribalized African. This collage over here, each chapter is associated with a collage by the incredible Julia Mallory, and this is a rabbit tobacco, so you can see the buds there, and then members of the Lucas family, that's my kin, and she made these beautiful collages to go with it. So I'm gonna see if I can try and read this because I forgot what excerpt I put in here. Every terrain is an invention. Though created through large-scale, often unchecked disturbances, it exists all around you, buzzing, biting, gnawing at life. As far removed as we are from modes of production, we are thoroughly entangled within byproducts of the plantation economy. We cannot comprehend what we don't see. These modes of illegibility frustrate us. Rabbit tobacco is often characterized as a weed because of its aggressive and rapid spread. It can easily take over a garden or a meadow if its natural ability to proliferate is unchecked. During mass migration from rural to urban areas, urban and black became interchangeable. When did this metamorphosis occur? And what happens to the people who are still bound to the farm? It is in this way we walk between worlds, often ill-defined, tethered to others' assumptions of good living. Born to do what? In the words of jazz singer Nancy Wilson, may be born to wander until I'm dead. African diasporic spiritualisms would argue that nothing is truly dead, that our ancestors returned in the contours of mountains, rock formations, plants who appear in soils ravaged by human hands, eager to start the slow, deliberate process of remediation. So we honor our dead thoroughly and often. This is a difficult thing to do in a modern society where death is omnipresent and grieving is usually concealed or time-bound. In ceremony, you are invited to stay in the darkness and not run away from it. The altar became a place to make sense of a world hell-bent on denying the presence of physical, mental, and spiritual illness of Black peoples. So there's the smoke we take personally, and the smoke cleansing that is more community-oriented. I'm not passing the blunt, so to speak, but letting the incense fill up the room and finally disperse towards the sky. Through rabbit tobacco, I'm taught the necessity of cleansing smoke in a burning world. But the altar is not a pedestal, nor is it a palace of deification. An altar, like a plant, is a conduit for clear communication. My preferred method of working with rabbit tobacco is through its burning, where I find myself craving deeper connections with those who have passed on. Elders and ancestors alike, they don't want us to forget. Part of the journey of reclaiming plant knowledge is to bolster those bonds with our predecessors, to better acknowledge their sacrifices, modes of interactions, and tough roots that refuse to be excised. Thank you. Oh, and also, I forgot to mention, we're about to move into a panel, so I'm really excited to be in conversation with NDGO and Ifé.
Are these already on? Great. I think we need at least one more applause for this. This is amazing. I have been taking so many notes. I don't even want to show, like, my notes are arrows back and forth. They're like, there's so many connections. I am so incredibly grateful and honored to be in conversation with you all. Those presentations were out of this world. I honestly think the world does not deserve Black women after this. Like, I really believe this. And so I have a few questions. We don't have all the time in the world. I feel like we could start dinner right now. Like, we had an appetizer, we could really start our conversation for the rest of the night, but we've got about 25 minutes. And so I've got some burning questions, and then I really want to open it up to the audience. I'm sure there are more questions out there as well.
and I wrote a lot of questions. I prepared them and wrote more notes, so just bear with me for 1 second here. I'm quite curious about some themes of repair and reparations and some of what we talked about. And I think in the span of sort of an ephemerality or an inherent ephemerality to Black spaces and neighborhoods and towns through either Great Migration, Middle Passage, Reconstruction, displacement, Black people are always moving and being moved, right? You guys have moved from your hometowns in some ways, and I'm sure brought a lot with you. I'm curious how this history of forced and chosen movement lives in your work, but I wrote a little more just how are we rethinking ideas of repair amidst this sort of continual spatial violence that we experience? And what are the ancestral messages in this? And I wrote like Ifé in large letters because I'm like, where is this galaxy at that we are taking the spaceship to? And like the real question is like, what's in that galaxy, right? Like I kind of want to tease out some fictional, maybe like ideas of what's there. Because when you said Black people, there's no safe space for Black people here, I thought like, that galaxy has something that we bring with ourselves from our ancestors, some practice that we acknowledge and keep with us. But what are the other things that are there to repair and actually make us safe?
Okay. That was loaded. So where do you want me to start at the end about the cabin in the sky? Is that where you would like me to?
Like the destination.
I don't know where the destination is. I'm leaving that to the ancestors.
Yeah.
And to the other bodies of entities that live there, that are welcoming us. And I this is not a fantasy for me. It's really, really not. I mean, Octavia E. Butler had it right. And she didn't even think of herself as a someone who could see into the future. She was so practical. Like she said, I have my list, and she said, I'm just looking at what's in front of us. And if you really look at it, where else can it go? There's nothing else other than what is happening right now. And I believe that we need to create our own spaces. I mean, my grandparents, of course, were a part of the Great Migration, which is, African American. It's my immigration story, because we left that place and came to D.C. And when we move, of course, we bring our culture. And we also bring our sadness, but we bring our joy. We bring our joy. Like I'm really looking, in my work, I'm looking at how did my ancestors survive? They could not survive the Middle Passage. They could not survive enslavement if they didn't have joy. And that's where the hush harbors come in. That's where the ring shout comes in. That's where the dozens come in. That's where our food comes in. And we're going to take all these things and we're going to go, okay, where are we going to go? I would like to go to Sirius B. I would like the Dogon people of Mali. They knew about Sirius B before telescopes were invented. Let's go there. I don't have, and people were saying to me, well, how's the cabin how is it, I said, I don't know. Do I have to know all those things? I know what it is. And I know what it needs to be and where it's going. So I did this work, so can somebody else, like the structural engineers, the astronauts, the folks, can you help? Because that's what we're going to need. We're going, like right now, we're all about the mutual aid and taking care of one another. This is part of that. Yeah. I hope I answered your question. I don't know if I answered.
I don't know that there's a perfect answer to it, but I do think the idea of the sort of mothership and the idea of a space that we then envision as perhaps repaired or created by us, for us, what does it look like? What do our imaginations see in that?
I love it. I mean, it is a loaded question, right? And I think I kind of went in a lot of different places. One, I think about, obviously, my own family history and how, real life stories right? Or people navigating, some stayed, some left. I tend to dwell on those who stayed, right? I focus on what it took to be safe in an environment that would otherwise be just unimaginable. And because that's the focus, it sort of shifts my viewpoint of us being safe on planet Earth and in America, because there are lots of safe places, right? And I think that they exist in the physical realm. I think they exist in the spiritual realm and on lots of different realms, right? And I believe that the work that we do as artists is also, as a musician, I'm a drummer, I'm a percussionist, one of the safest places that I feel I am is when I'm dancing, when I'm playing the drums, right? And I'm in community, and there are things that are happening, you know, that aren't explainable, right? Like there's just no explanation for what is being felt and what's being communicated, what's being shared. I mean, we come to each other in our dreams, and our ancestors come to each other in our dreams, and it's like, well, how did this happen? How did this relationship, how did we come together? Somebody across the waters or somewhere prayed for this, put something in place for this to happen. To me, those are the places, you know, whether or not it's forced or by choice in migration, in movement, where safety is found. So it's dynamic. It's never, we teach our young people to be able to see through the illusion of places that aren't safe, right? We teach them to be able to connect early on, to have the sight, to be in right relationship and to be in love, right? To actually just be in love with themselves and in love with their families and in love with the plants. You did a wonderful job, Ashia, talking about this connection, this deeper study of the plant environment, and then bringing your family in there. And then your childhood dreams and memories of being, you know, daydreaming and having those experiences. That's a place of safety for so many of us, right? And especially for our children. So I don't feel like I have the luxury with the work that I'm in, working with families and children. First of all, families that cannot leave, will not leave, chose to stay, to leave the plant, leave their place, right, to go out. And I certainly don't. I sit in a space of anything's possible with the children that we work with, right? So if they do want to take that space shift, they can. But I'm also very much. I'm very careful and conscious with them about how they shape their reality and what we tell them is possible and what's not possible. And for them to be able to sit with themselves. And I think the distress of any situation, so this is the way I'm going to close it. I mentioned the Loeb Fellowship, and when I came here in 2016, I was really at my wit's end. I was in a place, deep Alabama, working. Now there's the South, y'all know the South, and then there's the deep South. And then there's a deeper South that many of us probably don't go to, right? My husband won't even go to some of the places I've been. It's like, come. He's like, no, there's no light. I don't see any, nowhere. Like, why would you go? So I say all that to say that, like, we have, it's really important for, what was I trying to say? I lost my train of thought, but I would say that it's really important for us to maintain a mindset, right? The spaces that can create the ability to see oneself outside of the distress of oppression. And that's what this fellowship did, in spaces like that, where people, like yourself and like you, and for all of us who are actually taking care of one another, who can afford, have the luxury of having social life and cultural situations and vacations, to be able to provide that type of space for all of us, right? Especially those family members of ours who we don't talk to anymore because they're too country, they're too backward, they don't understand my new family, my orientation, or anything that I'm doing. My artwork, all of that, right? You know, is to be able to create the spaces of safety within our own family network is like one of the biggest places. So
I just want to say thank you for reminding me that there are safe. Thank you for reminding me that there are safe spaces within the shakere, within the drum, within dancing, because that is very, very important. And I also, the people who stayed in the South, who remain in the South, are some of the bravest people that I have known.
Yeah, I would love to take a time to respond to, because y'all just like made me think of so much. And I think, you know, especially like, Ifé, I don't know if people have seen, it was like a made-for-TV special, Cosmic Slop. It was like soundtrack by like Funkadelic, and there's this, it's an anthology, the first anthology. To me, that's the only one worth watching. But you know, you can watch the whole thing and speak for, and see it for yourself. But this black conservative politician, he's tasked with this. These aliens come and they say, we will provide the rest of the earth with renewable energy, with all of the resources that you need, but we want to take all the black people from the planet, and you can't ask what happens to them. We just want to take all of them. And then he's like left with this like idea of like what to do, and it feels very like almost like kind of like Sun Ra inspired. And I'm very interested in the way that like black people like think about the cosmos and think about like what is beyond, in a way that like kind of like sometimes separates from the like traditional kind of like Christian like heaven and hell sort of, you know, like what would you call it, like theology, or even like in conversation with that, and so that, you know, like that's really interesting to me. And I also think, you know, I think that we take, sometimes when we're thinking about like finding safe spaces, we want it to be permanent. And I think that a lot of safety that we experience is very ephemeral, and it's very like temporal, and it's very like time bound, and that is worthy as well to like experience, to enjoy, and to be a part of. I really love the work that you're doing with the, you said the green belt? I took some notes. The green field, the black belt. The black belt, but the green trail. Because I've been thinking a lot, I think, you know, I think about our moment now in kind of like three, I guess, categories, which is climate change, you know, is very present on my mind. As like, I used to work with young people, and I still do, like I do like kind of like workshops and stuff. I'm an environmental justice educator, and I work with young people, like especially in Oakland. And when you're working with like young people in the Bay Area, like they know that like climate change like is happening. They like know, you know, like what the dimensions of it, and they, even if they haven't like seen it or experienced like the full front of it, it is something that is very present on, you know, like young people's minds in that area. So I think about that, but then I also think about, you know, ecological and green reparations. And then when we talk about like reparations, oftentimes we think about it in kind of like a monetary space. And I think that there's a lot of really great black geographers, thinkers, ecologists, theorists who are thinking we need to think bigger. And we do not need to only think about like that in a Western canon for black Americans, but especially looking at the scramble for Africa, looking at what is happening in the Sahara, what's happening in Congo. How do we, you know, like facilitate ecological repair, but not in a way that repeats ecological colonialism. And I think that is the thing that oftentimes I'm writing against in a lot of my writing when I'm thinking about like ecological repair. My ancestors, our ancestors, knew the earth so intimately. When I was researching for this book that's coming out in September, I was reading a lot of the federal slave narratives, and you know, they would have these I guess anthropologists or like you know, recorders. They go in, they talk to black folks in the Deep South who had experienced enslavement, and they were just like learn a little bit more about them, and not just the Deep South. And you know, they sometimes would go to like Kansas and like the Plains and you know, in Indian country as well. But almost every single narrative that I was reading, and this is like kind of like, you know, like late 1800, early 1900s that they're doing this kind of work, almost always started small dilapidated house, but there were plants everywhere, and there was a crop field, and that they had their pigs, and that they had their water well, and then you wonder what happened. You can infer what happened, because sometimes they talk about it. They're doing too well, they have a certain level of autonomy that white people did not like, and they came and they burned it down. And so this is a cycle that keeps repeating. And I think that, like it's really important to acknowledge that that is like a past trauma, but it is an ongoing trauma. It just takes on different shapes. And so, when we're thinking about like ecological reparations, when we're thinking about like finding safe places, I think that there's a lot of value in the temporal, but then there's also a lot in like, how do we get back in right relationship with the land? And I think that a lot of Black folks have a really important role in like facilitating some of that, especially like Black folks in the South. We owe everything to the South, and that's like my whole politics. So and that's what I'm kind of like reaching towards.
Did you? Wow. Well, thank you.
Yeah, that was amazing. Thank you.
I wanted to just sort of kind of come back off of that. I'm trying to think about which one particularly to respond to. Ecological repair. So safety, I could even say in my own work, I came up with a strategy for my own practice. And what I do in the field, a lot of times don't share until after, way after it's completed. And mainly that happened, I started doing that when I did when we worked on the first solar irrigation project. And it was the first time that anybody had ever thought that, the Black Belt region, people would need electricity for their farms, right? And that they could actually design and create their own solar irrigation system. And in fact, in Alabama, they told us there wasn't enough sun. It'll never work. We designed with community like the simplest gravity fed system that you could come up with, right? I mean, simple, right? And it will work, there's enough sun. So we created it. We worked with our community members, our farmers. Everybody was a part of the project, and they still own that project. But where we went into the spaces that we went into, we have to be very careful about our success. We have a history in the South, the Black farmers' lawsuits. But when I was working in capacity building and doing that type of work with our farmers, our landowners, it was never really so much of excitement and joy about the new technology that was being introduced or the improvement to the production process. It was about, what are y'all doing over there? And when I became aware of that, I had to move differently. And that's what you learn about any space, any new environment that you go into. You have to know how to navigate those spaces. Yes. And you will learn very quickly how to navigate those spaces, especially being a person of color and a woman of color, a man of color in the Deep South. And especially if you are a landowner, if you've had your land for generation, and if you're about to move into a high level of production, which is competition, and which is a part of an infrastructure and a system with rules that are designed to not allow you to win, right? That's just what it is. So when we talk about safety, if we want to talk about it on a level of feeding ourselves and our families and our communities, we need to, we need to look at what our relationships are with one another so that we can actually build the infrastructure to feed ourselves. That would be like a great place of safety, right? We all know the importance of healthy food, but where is the infrastructure? I'm not talking about just growing food. I'm not talking about just acquiring the land. I'm talking about sustaining it, and I'm talking about the full value chain, right? That's the level of infrastructure that we do not have. And it's not a victimization space that I'm in, and it's not a blame space that I'm in, but it's a reality, it's a realistic space. That's a safe space. And we know we transform our bodies and our minds and our spirits when we have healthy food. My first sustainable economic development program was with the Black Freedmen's Living Historical Farm for Children. This is Spike Lee's family legacy in Alabama, Wilcox County. Consuela Lee was one of my mentors, and they had been working for years with the children there. And I would also say that, when we work with children, we don't work just with children, we work intergenerationally. So it's 3 generations that we work with. Those children are the youngest that are meant to hold the continuity of the family legacy, right? Because we can't afford to not hold it at a young age. We have so much that we have to, so much that we have to learn, and so much that we have to navigate through and fight against and resource. And there's such a deep level of poverty that has persisted, that it's like whatever you get, it's like a sponge that just dries up whatever resources you receive so quickly. So part of the safety is, you know, one, securing the resource in the container for being able to make those types of moves. But also it's just having the right information and focusing on the right things. Let's focus on the infrastructure, right? Let's get more investors. I saw there's an impact investor here. I'd like to talk with you. Are you investing in food infrastructure? To what degree? How can I be of help and service? I'll close on this and I'll try not to cry. I'm actually feeling emotional thinking about it. One of the last projects that I worked on as a consultant was with the Western New York Food System Initiative. And it was 2021, I think we started it. It was an 18-month project, 21 foundations from across the New York State came together to fund this project. My role was the equity, diversity, and inclusion role of the 4 consultants, right? So that was 9 counties. What was really challenging, and this is a question, I understand why you feel like there's not a place that you could be safe, right? What was really challenging and continues to be challenging is the fact that we as a community of people that are coming together to feed each other, our neighborhoods, think that marginalization or racism or these deep-seated issues don't exist. To actually be like a major player, a grocery chains organizer or owner, and to actually say, no, what are you talking about? What do you mean? So like the work that we do, and I know these are words that we don't want to say these days, right? But the work that we do to show diversity and equity and how important it is to understand how to navigate those spaces is the critical work of this time. And it's not something that is easy to come into, right? I mean, I think people understand the concepts, but when you apply them in deep entrenched areas like the Black Belt South, the Deep South, and you're building infrastructure based off of historical oppression that, goes back as far as you can see. What kind of architect do you need to be? What kind of designer do you need to be? What kind of artist do you need to be? So I don't know if that answered any question. I think I went off on a tangent there, but you sparked some things around just the sort of the levels and the scales in which we are working and have to work, and the ways in which we need to really, I think, we have the opportunity to be better towards one another and better relationship with one another for that.
Absolutely. I just want to say, I don't feel like I needed to ask any questions for you all to vibe out. I don't want to be too formal in the panel discussion one by one. Like, this is exactly what we want, and I think we want to get in dialogue with the audience soon as well. And I just want to speak quickly to the what kind of architect do you want to be, especially because we're at the GSD. There are multiple different disciplines training for architectural work and built environment work. And I think those disciplines still, and we mentioned it in one of the presentations, those disciplines still operate within a context that values this sort of like toxic individualism that says like, my ideas are best and I'm competing to make sure that my ideas are best. You're very much so in solitude in that because of the competition it creates. And I want to speak to building community despite that because there are only a few of us at the GSD, Black people, people of color, and I want to talk about the ways in which you build community despite the continued sort of isolation of the world right now, the remote work, the resistance to going out, the fatigue that comes with the sort of like socializing after the pandemic. I want to hear perhaps a little bit about like the struggles of getting people to continue to do the work, right? And to be in collaboration and to continue to build community beyond the sort of resistance I think we're feeling right now?
I find that people want to be in community.
Yeah.
I'm finding that because of all the things that you mentioned, hyper individual as whatever and everything, people want to learn how to make a DNA. People want to be in quilting circles. People want to have gardens, because these types of activities create organic conversations and connection. People, we want to be connected. That's why people are here now. And it sustains me. It sustains me to want to take my work to community. And it just really warms my heart that community responds with love, responds with bringing their bodies there, their children, you know, because people, the connection is about joy and love. Like, we need to just really get back to the joy and the love. And that's where the Hush Harbor comes in my work. That's where the ring shout comes in my work. The joy. Because, as you stated, Indigo, people who stayed in the South, and as I said, they're some of the bravest people that I know, were not just staying there because that's all they had. They stayed there because they loved it. They stayed there because they would not think of ever removing themselves from the land.
Absolutely. Yeah.
And I get that, and I'm still ready to go. You know, I want to,
Both and.
Yes, both ends. Because I know my mother would never go, okay?
Yeah.
Like, there are people who would never go because they're like, no, this is my home. I'm an American. This is where I live. This is where I was born. And I feel like that too, and I just feel like there's something else. There's something else out there, and I want a part of that. And I believe that all the work that we do and all the work that you do is a part of that.
Yeah,
Oh, I'm done. Go ahead.
Yeah, it's with every riff, there's like 5 or 6 different ways to respond. So I'm trying to think. Thank you for that. Like, the joy that comes from, you know, celebrating gatherings, family reunions, the ways that we are able to come together when we come together and celebrate, you know, are to be cherished. You know, they're very special. I spoke to that a little bit before, is that one of the challenges that we have when we do this harder work, like the infrastructure work, right? And we have to work not only just within our own community, within our own families, we have to also work with allies and people who don't look like us and who aren't from our community, from different class backgrounds with different belief systems. That work requires extra work. And you have to be committed to do that work, that extra work. I can't tell you how many caucuses I've sat in, how many dismantling racism, how many training institutes I've sat in, how many workshops I've sat in, how many times I've been the container holder for toxic, I call it toxic handling. When you bring diverse perspectives together with the idea of building something beyond what you've known, taking a risk with one another, to be different, to be in love.
To be vulnerable.
To be vulnerable, to be sustained in that for what it takes to actually build the infrastructure, and to not ever have what we know as the slave plantation economy and the slave plantation agriculture. That's what we're building. And it takes a long time. It's not going to happen overnight. The types of relationships that we have to be with one another for this type of work requires extra work and commitment. And you can't cancel someone just because they have an opposing view.
Well,
just because they say something you don't like, or they did something, or they have a different belief. You know, you've got to be able to have the staying power. Because we're in it for the long haul. So Ms. Bird said that to me, the Black Freedmen's Living Her Story. You're in it for the long haul, right? So I think that that's really what I would say to that the sustaining of the relationships requires you to, one, be committed to getting there. I mean, when our families are planning for anybody that's inherited and responsible for their family's legacy, their lineage, their inheritance that they have received. They have a responsibility to uphold that. And it's like, how far in the future do they see with that, right? How far in the future are we seeing? So what good would it have done my grandmother to just take a rocket ship? Or our ancestors, I don't know. I mean, she was taking her rocket. I mean, people who work, anybody worked the field, anybody here, farmer, in that sun, 8 in the morning to, okay. So we already know we're already leaving our bodies pretty regularly in order to sustain ourselves physically to do the work. And mentally, we have to go places in order to keep ourselves in the work. So yes, they were traveling, and people continue to travel, but in the sense of the physical realm and the acreage that we are managing today and that we have collectively today, what is our commitment, to this place, but to ourselves, to our families, and others, So it takes work. It takes work outside of what you know. You have to constantly be committed to grow yourself and be different. And I'm going to say this is a little risky. I know we're in Black in Design. One of my mentors, one of the most amazing women, is teaching me how to grow my edge. She is a woman of color. She's an African-American woman who is married to a woman who identifies as a white lesbian. Now, that's been hard to receive over the years, to understand how that can happen. This is a woman who knows herself, but she calls herself spirit. Her spirit is what is moving her. It's not what she looks like in her body. I think these are the kinds of things that we are needing really to confront about this moment in time, right? Because, in another, the planet increasing at the level in which it increases, what is it going to matter? What your body looks like. If it continues to increase by another few degrees, right? Are you really going to care that the person next to you doesn't look like you? I want to know.
I know.
I might
Go
push
for
back
it.
on
Go
it
for it.
just a little bit, because I'm gonna say something wildly unpopular after this, but I remember talking about, like climate change with like a very multi-ethnic group of folks. We're sitting in Vietnam, we're learning about saltwater intrusion, we're learning about all of these different conflicts, and yet somehow the pain always gets outsourced to ethnic minorities. And then I said something unpopular, is like, I don't know what's going to happen first in America, the water war or the race war. And what I'm realizing now as climate change gets worse is that they are going to probably be intertwined unless we do something very serious and critical about it. Because when you live in a country as wealthy as the Americas, as the Western world, they can always outsource the pain somewhere else. It's getting to a point where that's harder and harder to do. But as people are racking up money and resources, and there's becoming a very obvious split, if there wasn't already, between have and have-nots. The other thing that I will say, kind of going further, that is also sometimes wildly unpopular is, unfortunately, we are not living in a post-pandemic era. We are living in the prolonging of a pandemic that was completely mismanaged by almost every single Western world government. And I would say just like the world in general, because we live in an incredibly individualist and a capitalist society, and this rush to get back to work, to further automize work, everything that we are seeing now, excuse me for being crass, in 2020, we were in the kind of F around phase, and now we're kind of in the find out phase, pushing AI in schools, pushing AI to take people's jobs, this complete alienation from the land. A lot of this is these were problems pre-pandemic, but I like to think of the pandemic as a portal, which just really identified a lot of gaps in places that we've neglected. The other thing that I will say, living in a major city,
a lot of people are overworked. They're tired. There are very few third spaces where people can gather where you do not have to pay. And that is a huge problem, especially in a place like the Bay Area that already that's the context I'm talking in, but could probably be applied to a lot of other major cities. When you are paying so much money towards rent, I want to enjoy my rent. Like, why,
this is what I'm saying.
Why would I go, you know? So I mean, I think that there is a lot of reckoning that we have to do living in a very like capitalist, very individualist society. What are the things that we are willing to give up to work towards a more there's going to be a really nasty period. That is going to be a period of change and transformation. But I think of it in the wave of like Octavia Butler, in the wave of like Alexis Pauline Gumbs. I don't know if people have read M Archive. She talks about transformation as being messy, as being hard, as being a lot of failures. Some wins, but a lot of failures. And we are currently in a very messy transition phase. That if we endure it, if we really commit to, as June Jordan puts, the friction and the undertaking of the pearl, I think that we can get there. One of the things that's been really helpful for me is sitting in grief spaces. One of the things that I mentioned in my book is that, especially in American society, there are not places to grieve, and grief is supposed to be hidden. You're not supposed to like grieve loudly. You're not supposed to wail. But in a lot of, you know, like, I think about my lineages. I think about, you know, like Southern lineages, my like West African diasporic lineages. Grief was communal.
Yes.
We do not have a lot of places to process our collective grief. And we could be grieving very different things, but if you are able to be in a space and you are able to wail and you are able to like be on the church pews and be on the floor, it's so important, and it can help open up this like passage of clarity. And so that's what I'm hoping for. I think being in grief spaces has been helping me kind of think more about the communal world that I want to see. And also, you know, just like mutual aid, going out and talking to folks. I'm an introvert, but like I think because I wear a mask a lot, I have to like get up and, you know, I have to talk to people and be like a lot more forward thinking. But I think it does take a lot of like effort on our end. And that's what you were saying too, you know.
Yeah, I think, thank you for that. And I think I just want to add that one piece, that the grief spaces are those spaces, right? Those caucus spaces, those spaces where you're sitting with the people in your family, the people that look like you. The hard work is getting beyond the space. The thing about the Black Belt region, largest concentration of African Americans in one southern region, right? We see the concentrations of poverty. We understand why it's there. When people come and we take them into our communities, then they look around and they ask, well, who are the poor people in the Black Belt, right? We have to be able to be in right relationship with our neighbors when they don't look like us. We're teaching equity and diversity and inclusion, but we don't practice it. I'm all for Black spaces, but I'm more for a safe space. I don't care what you call it. If it's Black and it's safe, that's an extra cherry on top for me, right? I understand the importance of having that space, but realistically, I'm sitting in all kinds of spaces with all kinds of people. And what does it mean for me to show up in my Black body as a Black woman, knowing where I come from, but also wanting to be in right relationship with you as a person that identifies as white, that is in the male body, that owns land that's next to my ancestral land. That's the work that we're doing. And it doesn't work well when I'm just coming with my idea of the space. It has to be a shared space. Yeah. So
I'm grateful for you because I'm not there. You know what I mean? No, I'm tired. I'm tired. And I just want to go back to what you said. Did you say, I know we need to wrap up, but I just want did you say that there's a person working with you who's a really great person who is a white person that identifies as Black? Is that what?
No, this is a Black woman she's a Black woman who is married to a white woman who identifies as a lesbian.
Yeah, okay. Okay, I could get with that. I'm queer, I could get with that. But I thought you were saying...
I thought you would get it.
No, I thought you were saying that...
No.
Okay, because my thing is, this is my thing. I don't need allies. I don't need any more friends. I need some abolitionists. I need you to be like John Brown. I need you to be able to put your life on the line. Okay, I need you to stand in front of me. When ICE is coming, I need you to be there.
You can do both.
Okay, and I'm tired. I am tired of being in these spaces where I have tried to be with the people, where I have tried to be open, and it's just the same. Then I end up reteaching, teaching you. I'm tired of teaching you.
Oh, it's not about
Like,
teaching.
when are you? No,
it's
I don't
not.
mean. I'm just saying
Yeah.
in general.
No,
like, when are you going to get it?
Right.
It's been generations already. I don't need another graph, another book, another flow chart to talk to me about racism, to talk to me about any of that. I just need you to do the work.
That's
And I
what we're
just
talking
feel
about.
like,
Yeah.
and I'm grateful for you. I am
the
grateful
work.
for you
Yeah.
and anyone else who can do that work. But my work is building these cabins. My work is making work for Mark, Phyllis, and Phoebe, and
Yes.
keeping the indigo in the hands of black folks, because that's where it came from. Like that's my job. And I honor that job, and I can't do that work. I'm tired. I'm 65 years old. I am tired. I have been doing this work since I was 16 years old. I'm dead.
Yeah.
Okay, so
And that's
I am
what-
very grateful for anyone
Yeah.
and everyone who is doing the work. And you know what? I need to work with you because I need to. My heart chakra is calcified.
I'm gonna introduce.
in certain areas.
Listen, you won't get it. Listen, I'm on this stage, and this is something I aspire to. You need to work with me, but around Lily. Be present. Lily Allen. This is a woman, 75 years old, who's been in this work longer than us, right? The aspiration is not to not create the indigo and keep it in our hands. You know, it's not to do all the revolutionary things and the radical things that we are doing, right? Because nobody else is going to do it for us. When we build our food system and our houses or all these things, nobody's going to do it but us. I'm not going to anybody and asking them to do anything for me or to be my friend. But there's a right way that you have to enter into my community. And I'm willing to show you how to enter into my community, right? If you disrespect it, then that's on you. Okay, so don't get it twisted. I mean, you know, it's part of the armor that we have to carry in order to be able to navigate some tough spaces. That's all I'm saying. Anybody here that's here at the GSD that's is going through the same thing. You want to work with these black architects? They can teach you how to do that too.
Ooh,
I'm here.
I hate having this job.
Yeah.
Because I told y'all I wanted to vibe out for the rest of the night. I really do. However, and I know you guys are wondering if I can't tell time. I was told that we had a little bit more time, so I was like, go ahead, y'all, do your thing. So I have the unfortunate job of wrapping us up. The good news is that I think you guys are sticking around for a little while. I would love that. We don't have time for audience questions. I'm so sorry about that. But I hope that we can continue these conversations. This has been an absolutely amazing conversation among you all. I want to give you one last applause because, my goodness.